All right. It is 2:32 p.m. Eastern, so we're going to go ahead and start the meeting. If that's all right with the room, could you speak so I know that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from, and welcome to the hybrid pre-submittal meeting with Holtec Decommissioning International, LLC, to discuss their plan to submit a license amendment request related to the power operations technical specifications to support the resumption of power operations at Palisades Nuclear Plant. My name is Sophie Holliday, and I am a Senior Emergency Response Coordinator here at the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, or NRC as you will hear it referred to during this meeting. It is my pleasure to serve as today's meeting facilitator. Before I launch into my remarks, I would like to inform you that for accessibility purposes, you may turn on the closed captioning for this meeting by selecting the three dots on the top of your screen. It's labeled More. And from the drop-down menu, depending on your version of Microsoft Teams, you can select Language and Speech or Accessibility to turn on live captions. The NRC categorizes this meeting as an observation meeting. That means this is the meeting in which attendees will have an opportunity to observe the NRC performing its regulatory function or discussing regulatory issues. This meeting has two parts. First, we will hear a presentation from Holtec on their power operations tech specs plan submittal. Second, I will facilitate a question and answer session during which attendees will have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions of the staff or Holtec and make comments about the issues discussed during the public Q&A portion of the meeting. However, it should be noted that we are not actively soliciting comments towards regulatory decisions at this particular meeting. As stated earlier, this is a hybrid public meeting with attendees joining us either in person at NRC headquarters, which you may see on the screen at the table, or online via Microsoft Teams. When we get to the Q&A portion of the meeting, I will provide you with additional information on how to ask your questions. You may notice that in this meeting, the chat feature has been disabled. If you encounter any technical issues with Teams during this meeting, please feel free to reach out to myself via Teams or email at Sophie, that's SOPHIE .holiday, HOLIDAY at nrc.gov. You can also join this meeting through the Teams audio-only bridge line by dialing area code 301-576-2978 with phone conference ID 987-845-505#. Again, that's area code 301-576-2978, phone conference ID number 987-845-505#. With that, I will hand things over to Ngola Odo, a project manager within the Licensing Projects Branch, Division of Operating Reactor Licensing, Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation, and I'll be back after the presentation when we move to that Q&A portion of the meeting. I'm going to ask that everyone hold your questions and comments until after today's presentation is over. Ngola, off to you.
All right, thank you, Sophie. I appreciate it. Definitely, just want to say welcome to this public meeting. As Sophie mentioned, I'm Ngola Otto, and I'm a project manager here at the NRC. I am filling in for Justin, who's not able to be here today. And so we will go through the agenda, go over some administrative items, and then we'll get into the actual presentation portion of the meeting. And as Sophie mentioned, this is an observation meeting, which means that attendees will have an opportunity to observe the NRC performing its regulatory function or discussing regulatory issues. And attendees will also have an opportunity to ask questions of the NRC staff or make comments during the business portion of this meeting. We aren't making any regulatory decision today, but the meeting is open. So we're not planning to discuss anything that's proprietary in nature. So the entire meeting is actually open session. Regarding public attendance, we do have meeting feedback forms available on NRC's website, and that can be accessed via https://feedback.nrc.gov/PMFS. And you would put in the meeting code, which is 2023-1299. And for those who are here, we just ask that you silence your phone if you're online or in the room. Silence your phone, and you will have an opportunity to via the facilitator to ask questions later on in the meeting. So I wanted to mention that again, as Sophie had mentioned. And we do have a sign-in sheet for those who are here in the room to sign in for today's meeting. We did attach the presentations to the meeting notice. So if you need to access that, you can write right now or later. And for the agenda today, we're going to do quick introductions for those who are in the room. We're not going to go to the folks remote because it's just in the interest of time. Then we'll do opening remarks, and then Holtec will do their presentation, and then we'll get into the public comments, questions session. So with that, I'll start with introductions here.
Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Heiser. I'm one of the Deputy Directors in the Division of Operating Reactor Licensing in NRR.
My name is Jeff Whited, and I'm the Branch Chief for Plant Licensing Branch 3, so Region 3 facilities in Doral and NRR.
Good afternoon, Jean Fleming. I'm the Vice President of Licensing for Holtec.
Jim Mixa. I work for Holtec Decommissioning National, and I'm a licensing engineer at Palisades.
I'm Mike Schulteis, Manager of Regulatory Assurance at Palisades.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tom Pollock, Department of Energy Loan Program Office. Chin Shaw, Department of Energy Governance Office.
Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jamie to make opening remarks.
With that, I'll be very brief. I thank you for being here and taking the opportunity to further discuss your plans for the tech spec submittal. Throughout this process, we've talked about the importance of robust dialogue, and we appreciate the continued ongoing dialogue, and we look forward to the discussion in your presentation and going from there. So turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just look forward to a good discussion today. We appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
Turn it over to Holtec. Let's start a presentation.
Great. Thank you. So we can go to the next slide.
Next slide.
So looking at today's agenda, I'll be covering the first couple slides, basically the purpose and outcome in the background, the introductory slides, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jim, who's highly technical, putting together this license amendment. He's going to cover the license amendment request, the content, along with the reason for the proposed change. Then he's going to cover the power operations licensing basis reinstatement, along with our renewed facility operations licensing basis reinstatement. He'll go through the tech spec reinstatements, an environmental protection plan, as well as the regulatory basis and our environmental assessment. Then lastly, Mike will provide an update of where we are from the regulatory plan of the licensing actions to support the power operations license basis, our schedule, and then we'll open up for questions. Slide, please. So we've covered introductions. We can go to the next slide.
Next slide.
Yes, please. The purpose and outcome, aligned with our other regulatory touch points in our public meetings. We're here to present the proposed changes to the Palisades nuclear plant operations license, operating license. That's our renewed facility operating license, along with Appendix A and B, the proposed changes that we intend to submit with that license amendment. Again, we're looking for any dialogue or feedback that the staff may have that will help inform that license amendment so that we can take that back and incorporate it prior to submittal. Okay. So the background, I think we've covered this, but it's just to reiterate. So the governor of Michigan voiced her support for the power operations at Palisades in April of 2022, and again in September of 2022. In June of 2022, the Palisades docketed the 5082 Alpha 1 certificate of permanent cessation of power operations and removal of fuel from the reactor vessel. The permanent defuel tech spec implementation at Palisades was performed on June 15th of 2022. And then the ownership and license transfer from Entergy to Holtec occurred on June 28th, 2022. So that's all leading up to decommissioning. Then at that point, Holtec held a public meeting in March to present a proposed regulatory plan for return to power operations, and that's been docketed. And then we've conducted a series of public meetings with the NRC to state each of the public engagements of our plan to return to power operations. Next slide, please. The legislature was passed by Michigan in June of 2023, so a year after Holtec took ownership. And that included a $150 million tranche of money in the fiscal year 2024 budget from Michigan in support of Palisades restart. The exemption to 5082 Alpha 2 was submitted on September 28th of this year. And then the renewed facility operated license remains active, and we have an active license through 2031. Slide, please. And then I'll turn it over to you, Jim.
Okay, so a little more detail about the actual LAR content that we intend to submit. And the background's obviously very important because it's kind of how we got into decommissioning. We're looking to back out and reinstate the power operations, tech specs, and license that we had prior to entering that decommissioning change. So with that, we're going to talk about the reason for the proposed changes. We're going to talk about use of the previously docketed power operations updated final safety analysis report as our bases for the design basis accidents that will be reinstated, that were removed when we went to decommissioning. We're going to describe each change and basis for each tech spec change that will be included, applicable regulatory requirements of significance, precedent, and the lack thereof, we'll say, in some cases. And then no significant hazards consideration, the environmental evaluation. We'll include the markups of the clean pages for the tech specs, and also the bases for information only, the reinstated bases. Next slide. So the reason for the proposed change is, as Gene had discussed, this supports, the state of Michigan's clean energy initiative, and when the governor letters the Secretary of Energy, and also as noted by the state of Michigan legislature approving budget dollars for the use to repower Palisades. Also, will support the reinstatement of the power operations license basis. This is one of several submittals that is needed to support that reinstatement of the full power operations license basis. And the key, and those are listed below in the next slide here. So, as Gene mentioned, we've already submitted the 10 CFR 5082 Alpha 2 exemption. License transfer application for operational authority. That's going to be submitted soon, very soon. Yet this month. The latest amendment for power operations tech specs is what we're discussing today. That's the subject of this topic. And then additionally, there will be a license amendment for technical specifications for administrative changes, mostly to reinstate operators, the operating licenses, senior reactor operators and operating licenses. And then finally, we'll do a license amendment to reestablish an emergency plan for a power operations facility. Next slide. So we'll talk a little bit about the power operations license basis reinstatement and the use of revision 35 to our updated final safety analysis report. This was the last docketed version of our power operations licensing UFSAR. Since then, changes were made to go into decommissioning. That will be reversed, and then some other editorial changes. So this will reverse those changes that were made. And then those are appropriate, any changes that have been made to that revision that are, since it was docketed, they're appropriate for change, because there was a period of time we're still in power operations that was docketed, those will be retained. And then any changes we made during decommissioning, we're going to evaluate to see if it's appropriate to change those or to retain those or not. And if it's appropriate to keep those, then we're going to have to evaluate it against that revision 35 for the power operations UFSAR. Also, this will support a reinstatement of the Chapter 14 Design Basis Accident and Transit Scenarios, the majority of which were removed when went into decommissioning. There were some that were retained, but the majority were removed. Those will be reinstated as they were. And here again, we're not proposing any changes to those accident analyses or that revision 35 of substance that would impact support of those design basis accidents. And that'll give us the direct link to the technical specifications that we're also going to reinstate and the basis for those.
Big picture to add on, you know, revision 35 was the operating FSR before we shut down and got into decommissioning, reinstating exactly as written, pulling back everything, kind of undoing what we did to get into decommissioning, and any changes will be evaluated under the 5059 process.
Yep, and that's the good last bullet there, good lead in for that. So yeah, the intent is to once again evaluate those under 5059 with the basis of this licensing action to support that.
Okay.
Next slide. We're going to talk a little bit about what the D-Field safety analysis report has in it and items that will be retained. Is a little more specific on specific analysis. So the postulated cast drop accident was retained. No additional analysis is needed to support that. And we'll talk in a future slide, though, when we went into decommissioning in order to support removal of the ventilation systems in the control room and the spent fuel pool, we instituted a condition in our license that we could not load a cask or move a cask in the fuel pool for 90 days after a fuel decay. That will no longer be required with the reinstatement of the ventilation tech specs, and we'll talk about that in some upcoming slides. For the fuel handling accident, the DSAR did a revision to the fuel handling accident to support only cases in the spent fuel pool, and once again to support removal of the ventilation systems in the spent fuel pool. And that actually included a 17-day decay period requirement. With the reinstatement of the control and ventilation, reinstatement of the ability to move fuel inside containment, and reinstatement of the control room HVAC tech specs, that will no longer be required. And so we're going back to the revision that we had prior to going into decommission of the fuel handling accident. So eventually, once again, restoring that in its entirety. And then here also lists, we talked a little about the actual tech specs that support, that were in UFSR revision 35, and that will support the change back to the fuel handling accident that was currently our record, accident analysis record. And that's control and ventilation, filtration, control and ventilation, cooling, and the fuel handling area ventilation system tech specs. And those will be reinstated. And then we already talked about the last bullet there, fuel handling once again will be allowed in containment, so that will be reinstated also, as was in the analysis. Next slide. Two other accident analyses or incidents that were retained when we went into decommissioning was the liquid waste incident, and no additional analysis will be needed to restore that to the power operations, as was the waste gas incident. No additional analysis will be required to support that. Next slide, please. So continuing on with the new operating license reinstatement, we're going to the license conditions removed or modified by the permanent fuel tech specs, which was Amendment 272, will be reinstated with the below exceptions. So there are certain like specifications, as is condition 1 Bravo, which was a construction specification, which was removed based on obsolescence and no longer needed. That's not going to be reinstated. Historical license conditions, 2 Charlie 4 as listed up there, 7 to hotel in India. for things like control rod drive 13 exercising. That was cycle specific. Cycle 25, which is come and gone, was removed because it was obsolete. That will not be reinstated. Hotel was discussed the first UFSAR updates once the license was gained after the renewed period of operation was submitted. So all those conditions have been met, and that once again was obsolete. So, and that's the same justification for the other items that will not be reinstated.
Okay.
And those are as discussed in the NRC safety evaluation. We went to preliminary to full tech specs. We'll be proposing to add no new license conditions. None are proposed. And then because there's multiple license amendments to restore the power operations licensing basis, we're proposing to put in text or bracketed text in bold those items that overlap other submittals. So when we look at a clean page, you'll be looking at what the page will look like when it actually goes in the books, with the bracketed items being covered by other submittals. For example, the license transfer application, Palisades Energy will be put in those brackets versus seeing HDI, and that'll be done by the license transfer application. So it's meant to make it a good connection between the different amendments.
Okay.
and what's being approved by which amendment. So that's what the proposal is. Next page. The fire protection license condition, when Palisades went into decommissioning, Palisades hadn't fully transitioned to NFP 05. It was approved. We were in the process of transitioning. We had one outage left to complete modifications when we shut down. And so we're proposing to reinstore that license condition as was previous, and to also complete the modifications, as this being would be our last cycle that would meet that condition. But for continuity, we're proposing to maintain that license condition as it was written, since the modifications will be being performed as during the outage, during this upcoming reinstatement outage, project power ops outage. Yeah, I didn't say that very well, but anyways, it'll be the outage that we'll currently be in.
We'll have the mods done before tech specs is implemented.
Right. And so this goes back to the staying in compliance. Instead of what we're currently in the 5048 Foxtrot, we'll be in 5048 Alpha and Charlie compliance. And then we already talked about and then the transition license action plan to complete prior actor. So that's the modifications that we alluded to.
Okay.
Okay, next slide. The tech spec table of contents, this is kind of a legacy issue that Palisades has carried along. And we're proposing not to maintain those in the tech specs. There's precedent out there by other companies that have removed the table of contents from NRC control. So we're taking this opportunity to put those table of contents into Palisades control versus submitting those. And we consider that an administrative change as previously noted in OE. Next slide. So now we get into the actual tech spec sections. That will be reinstated. The section 1, which is a lot of the use and application rules, they were reduced when we went into decommissioning because of the reduction in the number of tech specs. Not all the application rules applied, and those were removed. With the reinstatement of the tech specs, the application rules are going to now need to be restored to what they were to handle all the different types of conditions. Same like definitions, sections, numerous definitions will be re-added back in the tech specs that now apply that to the sections. Logical connectors, instead of having maybe 1 or 2 examples, all the examples will be present. And these mirror the standard technical specifications during 1032 for combustion engineering plants, which we followed when we went into our improved tech specs back then. Okay. Completion times that tech spec will discuss, have more descriptions and different additional examples for completion times. And same with frequencies, the different applications that you can get into in frequencies with the multiple specifications. Those will all be covered again in your story. Section 2 safety limits will be reinstated, and the limits will be as they were in the previous power operations tech spec. That section was removed in its entirety and replaced back in its entirety with no change. Then you get into the actual limiting condition of operation, applicability, and usage rules. Once again, we're going to restore LCO 301 and 302 that were modified by preliminary field tech specs, and then reinstate those that were removed, tech spec 303 through 309 as they were. Additionally, surveillance requirement applicability, those were modified going into decommissioning. Those will be reverted back to their state. No change proposed. Next slide. So actual tech spec sections 3.1 through 3.9 were removed and modified as stated below. There was very few specifications that were left, only those dealing with spent fuel pool and boron and temperature, and etc. and water level and boron concentration. So those are listed below. So with one exception is there was a note for control rod drive movement, which is an obsolete note, and that relates back to the cycle 25 FET surveillance requirement not having to move the one specific rods. That note's obsolete, will be removed. Talk about spent fuel pool water level, boron concentration, and spent fuel storage, those three specifications which were retained. A note will be restored with LCO 303 being restored for applicability. And SR and the surveillance requirement 314 and 315, those frequencies were reverted back to standard 7-day frequencies when we went to preliminary field tech specs. We'll be reinstating the surveillance frequency control program that was approved. And so with that, those frequencies go back to the surveillance frequency control program. Next section, next slide. We'll get into the design features. Next, section 4, a couple of items here to discuss. Obviously, discussion reactor core, those which were removed will be restored. For the fuel assemblies, section 421, 422 for control rod drive, control rod assemblies will be restored. And then in fuel storage, the ability to store new fuel was removed with the ability to receive new fuel back. With the power operations tech specs, those sections will be restored. And then also there was discussions in that section about criticality, and those will be updated back to what they were prior to our power operations tech specs. Next page. So this slide just runs through the different programs that for the program manuals that were removed that are going to be restored. All those that were not applicable in a defuel state will now be applicable with Palisades at Power Ops. And so those will be reinstated as they were. And I guess that's about that just kind of lists each one. I'm not going to go through each one of those, but those are all the programs that were removed. Next slide. Also, reporting requirements of section 5 were revised, but the actual, even though the radiological environmental reporting and reactor effluent release reporting was retained, there were editorial/administrative changes to change the term facility to plant. We're going to change that back to plant to reflect the power operations plant. That seems to be a convention when facilities enter a decommissioning at a site, and we're going to revert that back to keep that convention.
Okay.
All right. And then there's also different reporting requirements like the core operation limit report, the COLR, post accident monitoring, structural integrity reports, steam generator tube inspection reports those will all be reinstated, those that were removed in section 5.6, as they were stated. Next slide, please. The Environmental Protection Plan terminology was changed when we went to decommissioning to better reflect a plant decommissioning. Those are all administrative changes. Those will be changed back to reflect going back to power operations, such as, we had stated the handling and storage of spent fuel. Well, that'll go back to construction and operation of the plant as it was. Facility is maintained versus now the plant's going to be operated in a certain way. And then facility will be replaced with either plant or station. And then the term power level will be reinstated as now be applicable again. And these are considered administrative as they were when we went into decommissioning. Next slide. So from applicable regulations, once again, looking at those that were applicable, we went into permitted fuel tech specs. We'll list those again, those that are applicable going back to power operations tech specs. So I'm not going to actually walk through each one of those, but those are the ones that we picked from that submittal. Next slide. The environmental assessment, similar to the exemption from 5082 alpha 2. The decision or the conclusion was it's a categorically excluded. And the basis for that is once again, there's no significant hazard consideration. There are no changes proposed to how the plant is going to be operated as the way it was operated previously. There's no configuration or changes to the plant as really designed, constructed, or operated and previously reviewed and approved. There's been no relaxations in criteria used to establish safety limits or safety system settings. Say that 3 times fast. Tech LCOs that were in effect during power operations will be back in effect. So those that were essentially maintaining the same power actions. No significant changes in the types or increasing amounts of effluents. There are no physical plant changes. Once again, this is not intending to modify the physical plant. The plant is as was. And restoration of SSCs will be such that they will support the final environmental safety statements and addendums and the renewed license of environmental impacts that were done. Resumed, and also it should be noted that the environmental permits are also still valid and being met going back into power operations. Next slide, a little more on the environmental assessment. So no significant increase in the dose to the public occupational dose. Once again, plant programs will be restored to ensure the 10 CFR 20 limits are not exceeded. Once again, previous radiological impacts of the public from previous environmental impact statements will be met. But we are planning to reference the attachment in the exemption, which did a gap analysis to the actual general environmental impact statement updates that were done since Palisades went into new operations. So that'll be referenced in this submittal. And that discusses that a little more. It was an independent environmental review, and it proved that we were bounded by the original findings from the docketed environmental impact statements that were performed for both original construction and support of continued operation with license. Next slide. I think licensing actions. Can we talk about this, Mike? Okay.
Some water.
No. Okay.
So commitments, we've talked about this at previous meetings, that we're restoring our commitments that were closed out based on decommissioning certification. Jim had talked about the updated final safety analysis report being restored. NRC orders and industry initiatives, fully restoring compliance to those aspects. Return to service plans for safety related and important to safety system structures and components are in development so that we can show clear line of sight as to how we repedigreed our SSCs. Regulatory programs and operating procedures specifically to QA, ISI, and the EOPs will be restored to the operating pedigrees that were in place prior to entering decommissioning also.
So what is your time frame for restoring QA, for example, to its prior state?
So the formal restoration of what we consider the operating quality assurance program manual will be done when we transition to operating tech specs. With that said, we are instituting controls early on in the project so that work performed on SSCs is done as if that QAPM was in place, if that makes sense. So we'll be conducting the project and meeting the existing licensing basis as the decommissioned facility, while also instituting controls that stand up to the licensing basis as an operating plant, so that it shows a clear transition from decommissioning into operation without loss of any controls.
Okay. And at some point, I know that's not the primary topic for this meeting, but as you go in and start refurbishment work, we would want to understand the controls that would be in place for those activities.
Right, absolutely.
And we could absolutely make that QAPM, available to the inspectors to evaluate, the red line versus the decommissioning QA manual versus the operating QA manual, and kind of the difference between the two.
Okay.
We'd also offer up to the previously operating QA manual too as a crosswalk
Okay.
for inspection.
And actually, I just noticed that Deanna Zhang, one of our QA experts, has her hand up, so I'll defer to her.
So one of the questions we had, so you're saying that you're restoring the QA program and the QA manual that Entergy had in place prior to the transfer of ownership. However, given that Holtec right now, your quality assurance program that's in place is the DQAP, as I understand it, right? It's a decommissioning quality assurance program manual.
That's correct. Yep.
So, but even though Entergy has an approved QA manual for Palisades, Holtec does not have an approved QA manual for an operating plant. So in that case, is Holtec planning to submit a QA manual, whether that is taking word for word from Entergy's QA manual, or you're going to make modifications? That is up to you. However, currently you do not have an operating reactor quality assurance manual.
Yeah, we agree. Our current plan is to restore the previously approved quality assurance program manual for an operating reactor that was applicable at Palisades.
So are you going to submit that QA manual for the NRC's review and approval?
No, that is not our current plan. Similar to the final safety analysis report, is it that a previous licensing basis document was approved for an operating plant, the same operating plant. Our current position is that submittal and approval is not required for that.
So that is not our understanding of how, and we can discuss this further when you are ready to discuss the quality assurance program. But our understanding is that that is not something that would transfer over, that you would have to submit a actual QA manual that's under Holtec's control in order for it to constitute as an approved QA manual in accordance with the requirements for operating reactor quality assurance program description.
Yeah, Really appreciate the question and the perspective on that. We need to do some more evaluation on the topic and definitely extend the conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Deanna.
I had a question while you're on that slide, and you mentioned that you wanted to restore the compliance with NRC board initiatives. I know you had mentioned a number of those in previous information that you provided to us. Are those what you're referring to? For example, the beyond design basis from events.
Correct. Yes, those are where we start. We have obviously we have a list of items that we no longer were applicable in decommissioning. We're going to reinstate those, make sure we're applicable to those orders, and then we're going to have to go back and look at what's happened since in the industry and take an evaluation and see if there's anything additional we need to do. So we did list those, and those are some examples. I wouldn't say they may be all inclusive at this point because we haven't totally finished our review of current status of different orders in the industry.
Okay, thank you.
I think that may be an opportunity to have another dialogue with the NRC and probably combine that into a future meeting.
Right. Yeah, especially if there's going to be, you need approval of something that wasn't approved in the past.
Right. And yeah, so to your example, the beyond design basis information will definitely be, reinstated, put back. There's certain things that weren't fully complete that will have to be in compliance with.
Thank you.
Okay, ready for next slide. So this kind of ties in the multiple submittals that we've been talking about. So the exemption request 5082 alpha, right, submitted in September. License transfer application submittal, I will characterize as imminent. Very, very, very shortly, it'll be submitted. But there are some final validations and internal reviews that we're buttoning up on our end, just about there. Power operating tech specs, we anticipate submitting this month prior to the holiday period. Administrative controls for tech specs, we're anticipating a January submittal. The emergency plan, somewhat of a range. We're effectively developing two submittals, one with NEI 9901 Rev 6 as a basis and one with Rev 7 as a basis in anticipation of its endorsement. If the endorsement pushes out to the right, then we'll likely submit under revision 6 from a timing standpoint to support the project. The 5082 Alpha 7 notification for a schedule change to the PSDAR. We've mentioned that it's tagged as March of 2023. We see it as a first quarter of, 2024. Sorry, I got the wrong year on that. But first quarter of next year, we anticipate submitting that to detail the schedule change to the PSDAR. And then the notice of transition that lines up with our effective dates we've been using as the transition date, that there would be a notification of that transition as it's detailed in the exemption request. Any questions on the schedule or timing?
We had talked about breaking out its text back into two different separate submittals. I think that was a couple of meetings ago. I guess could you explain a little more what was the rationale behind breaking that out, because that's something that we had discussed.
Yeah, so we looked at it from the perspective of our UFSAR has a timeline, and it kind of keeps the history of Palisades licensing basis. When we went into decommissioning, there was a certain license amendments that were submitted at certain times, and the tech specs were broken out this way, one for the technical part and one for the administrative part, mostly for the certified fuel handler training, but there are also some other things that were in that submittal for the administrative. In order to keep that clean line of sight and to look at and to maintain it, an easy way to see how we transitioned into decommissioning and then back out, the decision was made to keep them separate versus submitting them together. So it's very easy to take a look back what they were before, what we submitted and transitioned to, and what we went back to. It was meant, one, for simplification, and two, for maintaining a clear line of sight in our licensing basis and how we got through this path. That's
The
really where the decision.
Admin tech spec license amendment is a fairly brief document too, so we don't expect that to be a heavy lift as we to do the line by line comparison. What did you say it was like how many pages?
It's like 8 pages
Yeah,
of
that's
the actual license.
content.
Text specs. So it's a very small submittal.
Thank you. And I guess that follow, are you looking for you looking for approval of both, or are you looking for a single approval of the whole tech spec?
I guess to us, I don't think we have a preference. It can be done either way. You can do like a one approval letter with both LARs. I've seen that done before. Or multiple, licensing actions can all be wrapped up into one. I mean, they have to be similar, though. I think have to be LARs or exemptions. It's kind of hard to cross because they have different effectiveness in the implementation language. But yeah. But yeah, the LARs certainly, it could be one acceptance letter, approval letter.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I see that Matthew Ham has his hand up from our tech spec branch.
Hello, thank you for recognizing me. My name is Matthew Ham. I'm a reviewer in the technical specifications branch. And on the point that was just discussed, typically the administrative tech specs, are you referring to Section 5 technical specification requirements?
Yes, correct. The very first sections which talk about staffing.
Okay, I'm having a bit of difficulty understanding the approach for the separate submittals for the power operations tech specs and the administrative tech specs. The Section 5 programs can actually impact the determination of whether or not tech specs are complied with. That they in some cases they set the clock for some of the tech spec requirements in Section 3. So I'm just wondering how the two different submittals, how we as staff will handle the review of separate submittals. And I don't know if any thought or any more discussion at this point is necessary, but I'm just kind of wondering how essentially both parts of technical specifications as a whole need to work together. So I'm wondering why the two different submittals are there.
Yep, Matt, good question. So the tech spec submittal will have the majority of Section 5 programs and reporting in it. The administrative one is strictly the organizational sections, not the technical sections for programs. And the administrative one, and this is all by precedent, all the plants that went into decommissioning, they were done separately. So there's precedent about these two being reviewed separately. We're essentially following the same path that we did when we went into decommissioning. So unless something's changed on how they're broken out, I know the industry broke out the administrative sections purposely to aid in the review process, to limit the review for the administrative pieces. By administrative, I mean the organizational pieces, yes, senior reactor operators and et cetera, versus certified fuel handlers, that section, versus the actual technical programs like steam generator inspections and things.
Okay, that clarifies some of my thinking. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next slide is just questions, so
Okay.
just roll into more questions.
All right.
Any other raised hands? Any other questions from the staff?
I'm not seeing any hands raised by the staff in the chat, Angola.
Okay. Well, here are no other questions. We can go ahead and go to the public question and answer comment section. I think there, we can go to the public question and answer section. So I'll turn it over to you. So Sophie.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we will be opening up the floor for clarifying questions or comments from our attendees in the meeting, non-NRC staff. I will do my best to toggle between any questions that are submitted via audio bridge line by raising your hand in the chat, or those that may also be in the room with you physically. So for those of you who have joined us on Microsoft Teams, to ask a question, please utilize the raise hand feature on Teams. It simply looks like a hand raising icon. You can find this at the top of your window. For those that have joined us via the audio bridge line, you can dial *5 to raise your hand. Either way, Teams will automatically put you into the queue in order of which your hand was raised. Once I have called your name, I will unmute your microphone, put you into a presenter mode so that you can speak. If you are on audio bridge line, I will do the same. However, you will have to dial *6 to unmute your microphone. Once unmuted, you are free to ask your question. We do ask that you minimize any background noise if you choose to speak, and that you identify yourself in any group or professional organizational affiliation if applicable. To ensure that everyone is given an opportunity to ask their question, should they have any, we request that you ask only one question or make one comment at a time and speak for no more than 2 minutes. If there are no additional questions or time permits, we will then allow you to come back into the queue and ask another question. So with that, let me go to my list of raised hands. All right, Michael Keegan, I see that your hand is raised. I will unmute you now. All right, Michael, you may go ahead and unmute your microphone. Please identify your name and yes, we can. Please go right ahead.
My name's Michael Keegan. I'm with Don't Waste Michigan. I've been tracking Palisades since 1985. A couple items mentioned. I'm quite perplexed by this whole process. It seems that the cart is before the horse. An exemption has been put in for. The NRC acknowledges they received the exemption, but they won't be acting on it until December of 2024. And yet you're proceeding down an avenue. You could be spending lots of money and you don't even have an answer on whether you received the exemption or not, unless it's like a wink and a nod and a shoe on and everybody knows. And this is just a kabuki dance. But you did mention dangling fuel, and are you going to be reviewing the 2005 fuel dangle, where for 55 hours a fuel bundle dangled over the spent fuel pool? Will that be reviewed? And also, Entergy, the previous owner, in June of 2021, put in for an exemption to start the destruction of documents at the Palisades. Have documents been destroyed, and how are you going to verify that they have not been? And then by one final item, we were interveners trying to bring about a public hearing on the transfer of from Entergy to Holtec. And at the last minute, just a couple weeks before the license was to transfer, the deadline, several thousand documents got dumped into the docket. I really don't think Holtec knows what they have. And you're heading down a path that is first of a kind, unparalleled, never done, exemption here, license amendment there. Boy, this is really going to be an economic boondoggle, and I believe will be the poster child of what not to do at a nuclear power plant. So with that, I'll say thank you for listening, and I'll sit back and listen.
Thank you for your comments, Michael. That was quite more than one question or comment, but I appreciate your interest in this matter. Jamie, if you're okay with it, we can move on to the next question or comment.
Okay, thank you, Sophie.
You're welcome. All right, Mike Chappell, I am seeing that your hand is raised and I will admit you to speak. Please go ahead and unmute your microphone. Identify yourself in any organization if applicable.
Hi, my name is Mike Chappell. I'm a county commissioner for Van Buren County. I'd like to start by saying that Palisades and its employees have always been great community partners, and that I completely support the repowering of the Palisades power plant by Holtec. This is extremely important to our state and our county as a source of carbon-free, reliable energy. As we have seen, energy independence is vital to our state and our national security. This reliable power source is even more important as Michigan moves away from fossil fuels and attracts new growth. In addition to the safe, clean energy, Palisades also provides our region with hundreds of high-paying jobs and tax revenues that are vital to our communities and public services. Van Buren County Commissioners voted to support this historic effort by Holtec, and I think it is imperative that this repowering of the plant goes forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your participation and your comments, Mike. All right, I'm going to move to the next person in the queue. One moment, please. There's someone in the chat named Supervisor. Sorry, I don't see a clear name here, so I will unmute your microphone. If you will, please identify your name, any professional organization or affiliation, and limit your questions or comments to 2 minutes, please. You are now unmuted.
Hi, my name is Dewey Cook. I'm the supervisor of Covert Township. So I represent the small community that surrounds the Palisades nuclear power plant. And I also want to reiterate our support of repowering the plant. I'm aware that there's been some opposition, especially from certain interest groups that I believe are residing elsewhere. They have an assumption that our community doesn't understand the risks of nuclear energy. And really, Covert Township, we're a small rural bedroom community. We're filled with engaged individuals, many of whom have close friends and family who have worked at Palisades for many years. And we scrutinize and we care about protecting our natural resources, especially the Great Lakes. Yet the unanimous support by the township board to repower the plant was an easy decision because of the transparency and trust that has been built between the community and Palisades. This is a relationship that spans over 50 years and has provided opportunities that have benefited generations, including those in my family. So yes, this is an unprecedented event, but this township has the benefit of knowing exactly who we're trusting with our energy needs. And we believe that this is an opportunity to lead the effort in creating a future that will support future development and preserve our way of life with minimal impact to our environment. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. I'm afraid I couldn't hear your name, so I'll just say thank you, Covert Township Supervisor. With that, I am going to go to the next person in the queue. I see Allison Furman. One moment, I will unmute your microphone. You may proceed, Allison. Allison Furman. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Please proceed.
Okay, awesome. I'm Allison Furman. I'm Representative Joey Andrews' Legislative Director. Rep. Andrews' district covers Covert Township, and I just wanted to voice our office's support for repowering the Palisades. The representative and I, as well as many constituents that we've spoken with, are really excited about the local impact of resuming operations at the Palisades nuclear plant. And we're hearing a lot of excitement, particularly in regard to the many benefits that the plant will bring to the community in terms of local job prospects, for maintenance, engineering, and security that all go into making the plant run. And there's also a lot of excitement too around the benefits that this will bring to the community's schools, public services, and local infrastructure. And of course, we're really excited for the opportunity to provide stable and reliable clean energy to the local area and reduce our carbon emissions. So overall, just wanted to voice our support and say that we're very excited to hopefully have the Palisades come online.
Thank you so much for your comments, Allison. Okay, next in the queue, I see Kurt Doro. Your hand is raised. One moment, please. Kurt, you should be able to unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kurt Doro. I'm a county commissioner in Van Buren, and I just want to mention I support the resumption of power operations at Palisades by Holtec. As a community and county and region, we have worked on what will happen when Palisades was going to shut down and how it would affect our county and the region. And the resumption of power will not only provide a boost for our area, but the power generated by Holtec is much needed by our state and region. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Okay, next in the queue, I see Griffin Graham. Your hand is raised. One moment, please. Griffin, you can go ahead and unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to first thank the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission for holding today's meeting and the opportunity to speak. In short, I support the reopening of the Palisades Power Plant. I'm representing the city of South Haven. I'm the assistant city manager. The repowering of Palisades is a historic opportunity for Southwest Michigan. It's also an opportunity for the country to demonstrate its global energy leadership. The plant and its workforce have long been good community partners in the South Haven community, and the repowering enjoys strong local support, including resolutions of support from the City of South Haven City Council, where many of our residents are former employees of the nuclear power plant in our community, including council members, Rotary Club members, and much more. This is an opportunity to create hundreds of high-paying local jobs and support our local economy. Additionally, the taxes paid by the plant are critical for supporting sustainable public services, including schools, libraries, and emergency services. Palisades is also essential to Michigan achieving its proposed climate goals. For example, by the end of the decade, some 20 or so coal power plants will be taken offline here in Michigan. Many of those are ahead of schedule, so there's definitely a need for sustainable and clean energy in our community. Lastly, Palisades safely produces electricity that's not only carbon-free, but reliable for the families and businesses that depend upon it. Thank you again for the opportunity to share.
Thank you so much for your comments, Griffin Graham. All right, next in the queue, I see Jacob Rushlow. One moment, please, Jacob. All right, Jacob, you may go ahead and unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. My name is Jake Rushlow, and I'm speaking on behalf of Representative Pauline Wenzel. She's the Republican leader of the House Energy, Communications, and Technology Committee. Representative Wenzel's district includes all of Van Buren County except for Covert and South Haven, which makes this project incredibly important to her due to the impact it will have on her community, her district, and all of Southwest Michigan. I want to thank the NRC staff for being here today to listen to residents of Southwest Michigan and their elected officials who overwhelmingly support the repowering of the Palisades power plant. Southwest Michigan residents are familiar with the benefits of safe, clean, and reliable nuclear power. We're home to one operational nuclear power plant right now, and we're hopeful that we're back to two very, very soon. Nuclear power has been one of the issues that's united both parties in our Michigan legislature and the governor's office. Last term, we passed legislation to conduct a feasibility study into nuclear energy in our state's energy future, and that bill passed with overwhelming bipartisan support and was signed by the governor. This term, Representative Wenzel partnered with her colleague, Representative Andrews from the 38th District, and led a bipartisan group of legislators in Michigan's nuclear caucus in drafting a letter to Governor Whitmer expressing our absolute support of the reopening of the Palisades power plant. Additionally, we've committed over $150 million towards reopening the plant, and we look forward to working with our federal partners to get the job done. Finally, Rep. Wenzel's introduced standalone legislation to speed up the development and deployment of advanced small modular reactors, bringing our state into the future. Looking at a global perspective, we've seen what happens when access to reliable power is jeopardized. Germany is trying to repower coal plants, while by comparison, France, which has done an incredibly good job in terms of nuclear energy, has been an energy exporter. If you care about the planet, if you care about the climate, and if you care about a secure and reliable energy future, then you should be all in on nuclear energy. While this meeting right now is happening across the pond, over 20 countries at COP28, led by the United States, have pledged to triple global nuclear energy capacity. We have an opportunity here in Michigan to not only be part of that commitment, but to lead it by repowering Palisades. This plant represents jobs, it represents a massive economic impact in our community, and Representative Wenzel is 100% behind this. Again, I just want to thank you for being here today, taking the time to listen to Southwest Michigan residents, local elected officials. We're all behind this, and we hope that you work expeditiously to approve this plant and approve future plans to bring on advanced small modular reactors to help Michigan lead the nation and the world in a clean energy future.
Thank you so much for your comments, Jake Rushlow. All right, next in the queue, I see Kevin Camps. Before I unmute your microphone, I'd like to remind those that have joined us via audio bridge line that if you would also like to enter the queue to ask a question or provide any comments, please dial *5 on your telephone, and that will put you into the queue as well. All right, Kevin Camps, you may go ahead and proceed with unmuting your microphone and proceeding with your question or comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Camps, and I serve as radioactive waste specialist at Beyond Nuclear. And I also serve as a board of directors member for Don't Waste Michigan, representing my hometown Kalamazoo chapter, 35 miles downwind of Palisades in the service area. The first comment I'd like to make, and I look forward to the next round, is to simply quote NRC Commissioner Crowell from a February 7th, 2023 Exchange Monitor interview. So NRC Commissioner Bradley Crowell asked about the Palisades restart, responded, quote, "When you have a reactor that has ceased operations and you've offloaded the fuel, that's a major milestone. To reverse course would trigger almost the entire licensing process again. Certainly the entire operation of the plant needs to be reassessed. It's not the same as a refueling outage, and it's not the same as a license renewal. I feel like it's difficult to get our ducks in a row for that because it changes almost on a monthly basis. I understand they, Holtec, are in a posture of wanting to find a buyer to do it, but I think at this stage of the game, you're going to have to start from scratch. It's unfortunate for those who are proponents of the plant that they didn't move on it earlier. This article is dated February 7th, 2023. I think it speaks common sense and wisdom.
And thank you for your comments, Kevin, and thank you for staying within our 2-minute window. All right, with that, I see the next person in the queue. Your name is Marianne. Marianne, if you would, go ahead and please unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
I'm Marianne Middaugh, former state representative for Van Buren County, including the plant, and am currently the president of the Intermediate School District Board, which includes all of the local public schools in Van Buren County. I'm very supportive of the reopening of the Palisades nuclear power plant. It provides some of the highest paying jobs for this rural, low-income county. It pays a great deal of property taxes when operating, which benefits not only the local townships, library, county, and all the schools, and thus the students of the county. The plant has also been extremely generous in supporting local efforts in addition to the taxes paid. It has truly been a great corporate partner in enhancing life in Southwest Michigan. As a former chair of the Energy and Technology Committee in the Michigan House, I also understand how Michigan needs the energy produced by this plant to meet our future energy needs. As you are well aware, because we are a peninsula, we are limited in our ability to import energy. I urge the Natural Resources Commission to support the repowering of the Palisades nuclear plant. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Marianne. Okay, next in the queue, and please forgive me if I mispronounce your last name. I see Joshua Przygoki. I will unmute your microphone. Please proceed with your question or comment.
Yeah, thank you. Good enough on the pronunciation. My name is Josh Pergaki. I'm the district director for Senator Eric Nesbitt. And I just first wanted to say thank you to the NRC for holding this meeting and taking the time to hear from everyone on this. Your transparency, your communication, and your openness throughout the entire relicensing and reopening process have just been wonderful. So it's great to see. I also see a lot of local community leaders from Van Buren County and all around Southwest Michigan here on this call today. And I think that really speaks to the importance of Palisades as a whole. Palisades has been an incredible community partner throughout the years, but even more importantly than that, it's just such an economic driver for our community. As we've seen, nuclear energy has proven over and over again to be a safe, clean, reliable source of energy for Michigan, for the United States, and for the world as a whole. So continuing with these sorts of investments are incredibly important. From Senator Nesbitt's office, Senator Nesbitt was one of the key members in passing Michigan's 2016 energy package. It included nuclear. Palisades helped us to hit some of those goals, and now Governor Whitmer has moved forward with a new energy policy and a new direction for the state of Michigan, and Palisades plays an absolutely key role in that. So I just wanted to express my support, the senator's support, and the very strong support of us here in Van Buren County and our Southwest Michigan community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your comments, Joshua. All right, next in the queue, I see Jacqueline Drexler. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name as well. You can go ahead and unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm very glad that you're making these meetings available to the public. It seems as if Holtec said that they were going to decommission the Palisades plant, but pulled a switcheroo midstream and want to turn their decommissioning license to an operator's license. It seems as if this might have been pre-planned, and to me, it seems as if they've lied to the public. Until there is a place for the waste, there should not be any more nuclear plants working. We do not have anywhere for the waste. Furthermore, dumping millions and billions of dollars only into rebooting an old dirty nuclear plant instead of putting this kind of money into renewable energies is foolhardy. In my experience, Holtec lies. I live on the Hudson River in Rockland County, New York, and our plant is Indian Point, which they are decommissioning along with Pilgrim, which is in Massachusetts, and which they've already decommissioned another plant in New Jersey, Oyster Creek. They've had lots of incidents. In my experience, Holtec lies and is not held accountable for mishaps, accidents, unapproved design changes, etc. by the NRC. I pity the people of South Michigan who are sure to be swindled by Holtec International. They barely know how to decommission and are unknown as operators. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Jacqueline. Next in the queue, I see Jim Story. Your hand is raised. Jim, if you would, please unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
Thank you, Sophie. Appreciate, first of all, your great job of hosting this meeting. And I salute also the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for its commitment over the course of these proceedings to public comment. I am the chairman of the Allegan County Board of Commissioners and the president of the Michigan Association of Counties. Allegan County is the near neighbor to the Palisades plant and my colleagues in Van Buren County. In fact, we are within the EPZ. The area of our county that's within the EPZ is probably one of our high-value real estate locations, particularly since the last 10 years. Allegan County residents have benefited from Palisades operation in the past. We have, every year since 1972 been participating with them. And I think it's important in your consideration to know where the operators are going to come from. Most of the operators, as with many nuclear plants, perhaps most, come out of as veterans of the United States Navy's nuclear program, which has accomplished 134 million safety miles and 5,700 reactor years of safe operation. Our residents have spoken over the years of their support for the operation of Palisades. Michigan needs the energy from this plant to survive. We are fighting depopulation every day, and the operation of this plant will show that Michigan is alive and well through electric vehicle manufacturing and through the providing enough power to power those vehicles going forward. Finally, as to our acceptance of the plant, on the north border of the plant is Van Buren State Park, a beach state park, and every summer that park is filled with people who have no disregard for Palisades, love being next to a place where they can recreate, and that speaks in that act of how safe they revere Palisades nuclear plant. So and I trust the Nuclear Regulatory Commission will be going down the path with Holtec to ensure that it's safe operation. It has done so for all these years when it was under several owners. And so it's very important that this plant be relicensed and produce electricity for the future of Michigan.
Thank you so much for your comments, Jim Story. Next in the queue, I see Kate Hosier or Kate Hosier. Apologies if I've mispronounced that. Kate, if you would, please unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
Thank you. My name is Kate Hosier. I'm the city manager for the city of South Haven, one of the communities nearby of Palisades nuclear plant. I wanted to say thank you to the NRC for today's meeting and the opportunity to comment today. And I wanted to say that the city of South Haven is supportive of the efforts to repower Palisades nuclear power plant. Palisades represents an important and an essential opportunity to supply clean carbon-free energy to the state. And this is supported by not only the city, but the county and the region. The plant has been excellent partners to the community, and many of the operators and people who have worked there live in our community and live in the surrounding community. As Governor Whitmer recently signed the bill establishing goals for 100% clean energy standard for Michigan by 2040, this is critical that this plant comes back online. So I just wanted to state my thanks to the NRC, the opportunity to comment today, and of course, staff communicate the support of the city of South Haven for this project. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, Kate. I see Kevin Camps, your hand is raised once again. Kevin, if you would, go ahead and unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Kevin Camps, Beyond Nuclear and Don't Waste Michigan. And I just wanted to clarify that my family too is from Southwest Michigan, dating back to at least the 1860s, if not the 1840s. And I would like to put on the table what is at risk at Palisades, perhaps the most dangerous atomic reactor in the country, if restarted. 21% of the world's surface fresh water, it's called the Great Lakes, which is 84% of North America's surface fresh water, 95% of the United States surface fresh water. And according to NRC's Crack 2 report, also called the Sandia Sighting Study, a meltdown at Palisades could kill 1,000 people with acute radiation poisoning, injure 7,000 with radiation injuries, cause 10,000 latent cancer deaths, and $52 billion in property damage. Adjusting for inflation, that's $163 billion in property damage in today's dollar figures. And since the population is larger now than in 1982, when the report was published, those casualty numbers would be much worse. So I think the history of nuclear power worldwide, which has been referred to, should include the history of the residents of the Chernobyl and Fukushima dead zones. So this glossing over by the company town of the benefits, what about the $4.5 billion in federal and state bailouts that's going to be involved in this restart, and another $7.4 billion to build the SMRs? That's close to $12 billion of public money. The opportunity costs are outrageous. $16 million per restored job at the old reactor is absurd. You could start a new renewable energy company and hire hundreds of workers for the amount of money being put into one restored job at Palisades. So this is outrageous. This is absurd, astronomically expensive, and the risks cannot be overstated. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, for your comments. Next in the queue, I see Jody Flynn. Your hand is raised. Jody, if you would, go ahead and unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, that's great. I live just south of the nuclear power plant and have had a cottage, my husband and I, for 40 years, and then generations and generations before it. I have watched cottages go into Lake Michigan, and yet they're storing fuel at that site in Palisades, and I do not know what makes them think that nothing is ever going to happen to that. As I understand it, the SMRs too will produce perhaps even more fuel. I'd like to know how much fuel can be had in a specific given area, because that area is just too small to hold all of that fuel. These are incredibly critical points, and no, we do not love having the nuclear power plant there like the other. That is the opposite. We do not want that, and we feel like we've done our time. It's time for another location. I don't think the SMRs even need that water anyway. Move them someplace else. That's it. I could go on, but I'll make a statement against that.
Thank you so much for your comments, Jody. We appreciate your interest in nuclear power. Okay, Ngola, at this time, I do not see any other hands raised, so let's make this another call. Oh, Michael Keegan, I see that your hand is raised. One moment, please. Michael, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Thank you. Michael Keegan with Don't Waste Michigan. I love jobs. I love taxes. I love apple pie. I love my mom. I even love the Lions. But not any of that has to do with the safety of Palisades. We're trying to tell you, trying to do my job as a citizen to tell you there are problems at Palisades. It was a dilapidated jalopy when they shut it down. It needs a total refurbishment, which will be in the multi-billions of dollars. Why would you do it? Holtec does not have a clue as to what they have, and the NRC is allowing them to make it up as you go. It is the blind leading the blind. Recently, Commissioner Hansen informed Senator Markey that it was the NRC that initiated this process. You now have put in place a return to power committee. Report came out November 17th. The public is being railroaded, and it's like drinking out of a fire hose. Yes, I understand the need for commerce in the state, the need for energy, but you do not have a competent character putting forth a proposition in Holtec, putting forth a proposition of Palisades. They have no operating experience on a nuclear power plant. They scarcely have any operating information on decommissioning. They are befuddling the public, and I encourage you to dig deep into the documents which have been made public, which we are trying to get out. So, word of caution, you've really got a bad situation at Palisades, and it needs to be shut down and stay shut down. Thank you. And I've been at the Palisades plant since '85. I know that of which I speak.
Thank you for your comments, Michael. We appreciate your comments. Kevin, I see that your hand is raised once again. One moment, please, Kevin. All right, Kevin, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Kevin Camps, Beyond Nuclear and Don't Waste Michigan. I appreciated the exchange earlier about quality assurance, and I would like to bring to everyone's attention who's attending the quality assurance failures of Holtec dating back to the 1990s, specifically in regards to its high-level radioactive waste containers. I had the honor and privilege of meeting and working with an industry whistleblower named Oscar Shirani and an NRC whistleblower named Dr. Ross Landsman. Oscar Shirani has passed on, unfortunately, but Dr. Landsman, retired from the NRC, is still living. Both of them blew the whistle on Holtec's across-the-board quality assurance violations involved in its high-level radioactive waste containers, their design, their fabrication. I was interested to see the slide that mentioned fuel handling incidents, cask drops, because wouldn't you know, the Holtec design deployed at San Onofre, California, led to a cask drop or a near cask drop, fully loaded. So I would just urge NRC to stand your ground on quality assurance regulations and their enforcement, because the agency sure did not do that on Holtec's high-level waste containers, countless numbers of which are now deployed across the country, of questionable structural integrity sitting still at 0 miles per hour in on-site storage, let alone being barged on Lake Michigan from Palisades or rolling down the rails at 60 miles per hour going out west. These are disasters waiting to happen. The quality assurance failures are baked into these containers. Nothing's been done about it in decades. So the quality assurance of reactor operations is just as risky, more risky than what I've described. So I really urge NRC to do your job and enforce those regulations. No shortcuts, no get out of jail free cards for Holtec.
Thank you so much for your comments, Kevin. At this time, I see Jacqueline, your hand is raised again. Jacqueline, you should be able to unmute your microphone and proceed with your question or comment.
Thank you very much. So a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I was at one of these meetings. It was a very serious meeting. The NRC was questioning Holtec about these incidents, the change in design, how many casks were out there, where were they? And it was a very serious meeting. It was the most serious meeting I've ever been to. I was kind of impressed by that. But here's the problem. The problem is that this company continues to do bad things. Back in September, I think it was, maybe it was October, they were caught by the Department of Transportation transporting radioactive machinery from the Oyster Creek to Indian Point. Now, this is a company that doesn't seem to know what they're doing, and that's just in decommissioning. I really have grave concerns. I've heard that the Palisades, Michigan plant is one of the most embrittled plants, which means there's tremendous danger and risk there. And I just don't understand why the state and the Department of Energy want to dump money into this when they could be putting money towards renewable projects where people would be making money, not just spending money. So we have a decommissioning oversight board meeting on Wednesday for Indian Point. And I know Holtec is going to come right before us. As a matter of fact, at that meeting a month or two ago, one of the people on the Holtec panel was kind of begging the NRC for more time to address the questions that were asked. They were asked a lot of questions. They were told that they had 2 weeks to answer the questions once the transcript came out, and they kept on arguing to get more time. And I just don't understand why Holtec is everyone's best friend, because they're certainly not mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And at this time, I don't see any hands raised, so I'll have a friendly reminder for everyone. If you would like to provide any additional questions or comments, please use the raise hand function. The icon looks just like this at the top of your Teams window. Or if you've joined us by audio bridge line, you can dial *5. Kevin, I do see your hand is up again. Give me just one moment to unmute your microphone. All right, Kevin, you should be able to proceed.
Hi, thanks. Kevin Camps, Beyond Nuclear and Don't Waste Michigan. I have a question for the NRC. I've studied Holtec's application to the Department of Energy, and I know there's a couple loan program office officials in the audience in the room there. It's a July 5th, 2022 application to DOE for $2 billion from the Civil Nuclear Credit Program for reactor restart. The bridge loan, as they call it, of $1 billion nuclear loan guarantee from DOE is mentioned in there. The $300 million from the state of Michigan, $3.3 billion in that 2022 document. They've added another billion or more in more federal subsidies for the project since. My question is, in that pretty detailed 42-page document, there's very little mentioned at all about the reactor vessel closure head, other than minor maintenance and monitoring. But previous owner, Consumers Energy, in May of 2006, made it clear to the Michigan Public Service Commission that that lid needed to be replaced. It has not been replaced in all these decades since. Is the NRC going to finally require Holtec to replace the reactor vessel closure head at Palisades in the aftermath of the Davis-Bessie near miss of 2002? How can that lid continue to be used in full power operations at Palisades? And a similar question about the control rod drive mechanism seal leaks dating back to 1972, a chronic problem at Palisades, uniquely bad in operating experience in the US nuclear power industry. Why does NRC not require Palisades, whoever the owner is, to get to the root cause of that problem and fix it once and for all? And speaking of root causes, you know what's been on my mind preparing for this meeting? The Japanese parliament's conclusion that the root cause of Fukushima Daiichi was collusion between the regulator, the company, and government officials. And I think that the situation at Palisades involves as much or more collusion between regulator and government officials and the company Holtec as was going on at Fukushima Daiichi before that catastrophe unfolded in 2011. That's what we're risking here at Palisades. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, Kevin. At this time, I see that Jody, you have your hand raised. Give me one moment, Jody, and I will unmute your microphone. All right, Jody, you should be able to unmute now.
Okay, once again, I just lived right next door to the Palisades nuclear power plant. And this is a comment to the NRC that we rely on you to protect us. I don't know if you're really getting that message or if it's getting clouded with all the money being floated around, but this is an important job that you have. And I have a daughter at the age of 10 who's on thyroid for the rest of her life because of tritium in the water, and there's all kinds of thyroid problems. We rely on you for the NRC. That's my final comment, and I wish to gosh we could have faith that you will protect our safety.
Thank you so much for your comments, Jody. Okay, I see Kathy Wagman, your hand is raised. Kathy, if you would, go ahead and unmute your microphone and state your organizational affiliation if applicable.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm Kathy Wagaman. I'm the Executive Director of the South Haven Area Chamber of Commerce, and I speak to you today representing hundreds of local businesses throughout Van Buren and Allegheny counties, and that includes retail, manufacturing, hospitality, tourism, and agricultural commerce. Since the beginning of the commercial operations of Palisades Power Plant, they have always been a strong community partner. They've directly employed over 600 trained nuclear professionals, many of whom call South Haven home. And these full-time workers were also supplemented by the influx of over 1,000 specialty workers each year for repowering of the plant. And Palisades and its employees have also demonstrated a lot of care for our community through generous charitable and volunteer efforts that have helped our schools and many nonprofits throughout our community. The repowering of Palisades would be a major economic boon to the state of Michigan, as evidenced by a recent study by the Economic Growth Institute at the U of M. And they found that the shutdown of Palisades resulted in an annual loss of over $259 million in labor income alone. So lastly, I'd like to say that the early closure of Palisades exacerbated our domestic energy challenges, which is really a concern for all of our Michigan utility customers, both residential, commercial, and industrial. It's particularly concerning as Michigan tries to attract new employers. We believe that the repowering of the facility offers a strategic solution that can help our state and nation reduce the dependence on fossil fuel generation and transition more towards the use of renewable energy sources and cutting-edge energy technologies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your comments, Kathy. At this time, I see, another hand from another Kathy. Kathy Barnes, give me one moment. Kathy, if you would, you can unmute your microphone. Please identify your organizational or professional affiliation if applicable.
Yeah, I'm with Don't Waste Michigan, and I'm concerned because I feel that Palisades was shut down for a reason, a lot of reasons actually. Basically, Entergy sold it to Holtec. Holtec was going to decommission it. Then for some odd reason, they thought they should restart it, and they got some money to study it, etc. But the thing is, Palisades was shut down for some good reasons. Basically, it was too expensive to repair. And another thing, it needed to be decommissioned so they can clean up the site and remove the tritium before it make Michigan radioactive. Tritium joins with the hydrogen atoms of water and makes the water tritiated, and it can't be undone. So it's important to remove the tritium from that site before it gets out into Lake Michigan, or possibly to stop it from getting out into Lake Michigan if it's already seeped out into there. And the only way you can do that is to take the plant down and remove the contamination underneath the plant from when the pipes leaked under the plant. Also, the Holtec is not a company that runs nuclear power plants. It's a company that has been buying up decommissioned nuclear power plants to supposedly do cleanup. A site on top of Lake Michigan is not a good place. Actually, there's no good place for nuclear power plants. And the mere aspect that to run, it's a cycle of death. The uranium mining is a death cycle, and transportation, spills, waste, nuclear waste end product, nuclear war, the potential for nuclear war, and the threat of terrorism. Nuclear energy is not green energy. It takes a lot of fossil fuel to do all of the aspects of building those plants and the materials, etc. So instead of putting money into small modular reactors on that site, or to try and fix that embrittled, aging nuclear reactor, which risks the life of everybody in Michigan, should there be a major accident, and the Great Lakes, and Canada, and other surrounding areas and states, I think that money could be better used to promote small, safe, renewable technologies, such as small wind turbines, and like backyard turbines, small ones, not the kind that are looming over people and driving them out of their homes, etc., but just the small kind of ones that homesteaders use. And rooftop solar, especially on brownfields, and put these things, decentralize them so that small businesses and homeowners and, skyscrapers can have them on the rooftops, et cetera, et cetera. Use the existing green technology to build up a better world instead of trying to resurrect the scepter of Fukushima, Chernobyl, all these nuclear disasters that it's only by the grace of God that Palisades didn't already melt down and contaminate everything, because it came close to it several times. So I think that Holtec should do its job, safely decommission the plant with nuclear oversight, no more nuclear energy facilities on the Great Lakes. And as far as any other place, the potential for groundwater contamination and all the risks involved is just too great. And nuclear should be something that should have stopped in Hiroshima, or actually stopped before that, or should have never happened. Splitting the atom is just destructive. It's the very opposite of creation, which holds atoms together. So it's a very destructive and very deadly and misused force. And I think that you should just do your job, decommission it, clean up the site, NRC oversight, and that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your comments, Kathy. I appreciate that. I do see one hand up. Michael Keegan, I'm going to take you as our last comment for the meeting. One moment, please, Michael. Hey, Michael, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Okay, thank you for taking me again. Aside from the health and the impact, potential danger to the community, thousands of cancers, economic devastation if there were a catastrophe, there's another large cost. It's called opportunity cost. If this $4.5 billion marches down the line to bring Palisades, resuscitate this zombie, you have put that money on the sideline. You have spent several years to do it when there are renewables and alternatives that could be brought in a much shorter window. You're locking up the transmission grid, the transmission corridor, to accommodate Holtec engaging in a first of a kind, one of a kind, special, never had any experience operating process that is so convoluted and strictly driven by greed, the almighty buck. So it's the opportunity cost of going down this avenue. It would be the loss of tourism if there were to be an accident and the community were contaminated. The loss